This is Paranormal Now.
Wherever you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls of the planet and beyond, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight's guest is a returning guest, Dr. Rita Louise. You've heard of her. She's had a plethora of works across the board for the healing of your soul, wellness, psychological, mythological, ancient aliens, you name it, she's covered it. And tonight we'll be talking about the dysfunctional dance of the empath and narcissist, create healthy relationships by healing childhood trauma. This is a fascinating look at her new book and at how empaths were made, in a sense. We'll be drawing conclusions that actually may surprise you tonight. So I'm really excited about this conversation with Rita. This is a path that we haven't really gone down before. Before we do that, please share your thoughts and experiences with us during or after the show on Facebook.com/ParanormalNowRadio, Twitter @Paranormal_now, and of course, join us in the KGRA chat room where you can pose your questions. So just go to KGRARadio.com, click on chat, join the party. And if you could take a moment as well, check out the Paranormal Pop YouTube page. If you can go there, just go to youtube.com/paranormalpop and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you can get more Fun with Ufology series videos, as well as Coffee and UFOs and so much more. It's my sister platform and sister series and shows to Paranormal Now. Tonight, lines will be open. So if you want to call in, 85 KGRA Live is what you need to dial for the Paranormal Radio app hotline. That's 85 KGRA Live. Listen to your cue to call in the second half of the second hour. Stand by. We'll bring you on the air, and then it's you. Your thoughts, your questions. You can ask me or Rita whatever you like, as long as it's within the realm of respectability. I do have some comments regarding last week's show that I have to share with all of you because I was personally troubled afterwards a little bit. And so here are my ruminations concerning the conversation I had with our guest, Ryushin Malone. And before doing so, know that I went back and listened again to make sure my concerns weren't inflated. Now, while Paranormal Now is an open platform for ideas to be presented and discussed, let me just be perfectly clear that I do not support, condone, or mean to propagate his Holocaust theory, and I do think it is offensive. Now, I communicated with Ryushin, who wants to emphasize that his theory on why the Holocaust happened does not reflect his values on humanity, and that all people are inarguably of equal value. That said, this theory that aliens gave advanced technology to the Nazis in exchange for human harvesting is undeniably offensive, and I'll explain to you why I would believe that to be so. This is a dangerous idea, mainly because it undermines, intentionally or not, it undermines the severe weight and very real horrors and atrocities and insidious manipulation of the human mind towards evil of the worst kind. To subscribe to this idea suggests that perhaps the Nazis otherwise might not have targeted Jewish people in the same way, or demonized Judaism and Jewish culture to the extent that it did. It opens up the idea that implies that perhaps there would not have been concentration camps and extermination, nor torture, nor people being experimented on, nor people ripped from their homes, or women being raped and then having dogs mutilate them, nor shot cold-heartedly in their neighborhoods. This is not something to ever be taken lightly, nor should any theories like this be presented lightly without being accompanied responsibly by expressing a deep understanding of the gravity of the subject, along with the proper historical representation of what happened alongside it. Now, I'm not saying Ryushin is not aware of this, but in general, not being self-aware of what a theory like this means to the victims, to listeners like you, Jews, and all of us, is detrimental. One has got to be sensitive when presenting a subject like this, a theory. By suggesting that human hands were moved by an outside force, what that could teach, inform, is that maybe it won't happen again, or at least not to such a degree. That maybe it couldn't have, because that was some alien race that was the motivating force behind all this. And I find that unacceptable. The pain, the anguish that only some can possibly imagine or remember still is diminished to some degree here. And this idea can be appropriated and weaponized by those who are in fact racist and prejudiced. Evils like this do not require anything other than humans at their worst and complacent. It is not an aberration of a history long past and never to be seen again. Let's not overlook recent genocides like that in Rwanda, Sudan's Darfur region, where 300,000 genocidal deaths occurred. Last year, the BBC reported that Christianity is at risk of disappearing in some parts of the world. For example, in Iraq, the number of Christians had fallen from 1.5 million in 2003 to less than 120,000. As we all well know, Jewish people continue to be targets of violence all around the world, and right here in the US of A, in our own backyard, blood is being spilt. As I speak, substantiated reports continue to come in about a cultural genocide of Muslims in China right now. So incorporating an idea like this into a presentation has very serious potential side effects and implications. Now, I feel that last week I didn't respond quickly enough when Ryushin brought this up, nor did I adequately respond with my own just personal concerns. Two things. For one, across the board, I was just not on my best game that night as it was. And there were a few moments where I really should have pressed for more evidence in a number of cases to support the many assertions made by our guest. However, at some point, I had to accept that it was unlikely evidence could have been presented and articulated appropriately on the air. We discovered that. So what I chose to do and thought was the best course of action at the time was to just move along from one idea to the next until we finished the show. And in particular, not spend additional time discussing specifically what happened under the Nazi regime. Now, I really do thank all of you for your feedback and continued support. In retrospect, I know I should have pressed a little more. In fact, pressing Ryushin is both a good thing for him and for us. And if there was a night I should have been on my best game, it was last week. Because you deserve the absolute best interviews and programs that I can provide. So that's my thought process on last week's show. I will leave it at that. And I promise you moving forward, I will do my absolute best to ask the right questions and to challenge when most appropriate. All right. Well, with that heavy load, Dr. Rita, welcome to Paranormal Now.
I mean, we don't get to talk about aliens and Nazis? Oh, man.
So obviously, you and I have talked about many a wild theories.
Yes, sir.
And I love having you on the program. So for all those listening, Dr. Rita Louise and I go back to the IRN Inception Radio Network platform. And I think that I'm going to let you take the lead on this because this is a territory I'm not totally familiar with, Rita. But quickly, let's just do a brief overview of your bio. So Dr. Rita Louise is the best-selling author and founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics and the host, or was the host, of Just Energy Radio. Are you still hosting, Rita?
I am not.
You're not. Okay. She is a naturopathic physician and a 20-year veteran in the human potential field. Her unique gift as a medical intuitive and clairvoyant illuminates and enlivens her work. She is the author of books Stepping Out of Eden, E.T. Chronicles, What Myth and Legend Have to Say About Human Origin, Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4, Dark Angels, An Insider's Guide to Ghosts, Spirits, and Attached Entities, and the Power Within. She has produced a number of feature-length videos and shorts. Their titles include Icon, Destructing the Archetypes of the Ancients, Holy Deception, Ancient Aliens, Genetic Engineering, and the Rise of Civilization. So tonight's work is a little bit more, I guess, introspective and personal?
Kind of. It was a book I was not planning on writing. How's that? So, and as you may recall, because I think you were one of the very last people I interviewed with last year. So a year ago in October, I released the Stepping Out of Eden book. And, so I was kind of hot in pursuit of promoting that when a series of events happened that really stopped me in my tracks and kind of shifted a lot of things. And to be more specific, I was in a very toxic relationship and a number of things happened. And what I came to recognize was that the situation I was in was similar but different to other relationships I had been in and friendships that I had had, which took me all the way back in time to my family of origin and the relationship I had with my parents and my siblings, which was like a giant Band-Aid had been, I joke around, ripped off my third eye, because as intuitive as I am, it was like I was blindsided by the notion that I had agreed and participated in really unhealthy relationships my entire life. And I vowed to myself I wasn't ever going to do that again. And just was compelled to do some healing and understand what was going on inside of me and what was, what was going on, because it really blindsided me. And so this book, I say it's my journey to healing, but I mean, it's not a memoir book. It's about digging into yourself and understanding the dynamics between people and what's going on inside of you and what's it feel like to be healthy and in your integrity on the inside versus going along because you want the person that you're with to love you.
Well, when you say it hit you or blindsided you, what does that mean?
All right, so here's the piece of the story that I didn't share. So I had kicked my boyfriend out, and the universe provides synchronicities for you, and if you just sort of pay attention, you can't help but pay attention. And so I literally was sitting in a restaurant. A friend of mine came over. We loaded all of his crap into this guy's truck. We drove 2 hours to take his stuff to him because I knew it was going to be forever before he picked his stuff up. I was sitting in the restaurant waiting for my friend to come back with the empty truck, and I got a text from my ex-husband's wife. Now, this ex-husband was had very similar behaviors to the guy I just got rid of. So, thus ex. And we ended up talking on the phone, and the first comment out of her mouth was, he's a narcissist. Well,
wait, he said that he's a narcissist?
She did.
Oh, she did. Okay, got it.
She did. And I had just been starting to watch videos about narcissistic personality and kind of making these connections about this current relationship that I just ended, which was bizarre. That's the only word I can use is bizarre. I never knew what the hell was going on.
Well, bizarre, were you feeling abused, or was it just confusion? What was it?
I could never really understand what was going on. Did this individual have a mental illness, or was he a drunk? You know, and when he would do weird stuff, such as take one of my shoes that were sitting on the stairs waiting to go up and then hide it. I mean, like, how do you lose one shoe?
Right. Okay.
And then go, well, I didn't touch your shoe. It's like, well, you know, the dog didn't freaking pick it up. You know, and I'm looking for it because I knew he hid it somewhere. And it took me 6 months. I mean, I wasn't obviously looking for it for 6 months, but I was dusting, embarrassingly, 6 months later, because I was having a housewarming party, and I found my shoe behind books in a bookcase. Now, how freaking weird is that? And I mean, that's just one simple story.
He wasn't like a prankster, jokester kind of person.
No, he denied it.
Oh, that's bizarre. Okay.
No, I mean, there was just a lot of bizarre behavior.
Okay.
You know, and so now I'm talking to my ex-husband's current wife, and she makes this comment. I'm thinking this guy I just got rid of was a narcissist. Well, now I'm looking at my relationship with him, my ex, was he a narcissist too? Oh, wait, ding, 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 ding. You know, then I started looking at other relationships and friends of mine and my family, and it was just like, oh my God. And this pattern of crap emerged. You know, was there physical abuse involved? No, because early on in my childhood, I learned that physical abuse equals bad. You know, so if somebody laid a hand on me, they'd be out the door in a second. I understood that.
Right.
You know, but, you know, you do things that make me crazy. You know, you tell me one thing and then do a different thing and not have boundaries around, well, that really wasn't appropriate behavior. Not so good. Didn't know. I mean, I just didn't know. So can you clarify then, what in your experience is psychological abuse then? So psychological abuse is where, you know, the person might talk down to you, or they'll invalidate your thoughts and your feelings, and you say, well, you know, that really hurt me. Well, you know, that shouldn't hurt you, you know, or you say, well, this is really important to me, and they go, oh, okay, and then just do whatever they want. You know, so, I mean, there's a lot that is involved.
Gaslighting.
Correct. You know, but the net result is that you're walking around hurting inside instead of standing up for yourself and saying, well, you know, that's not cool.
Okay.
You know, because we shouldn't walk around, you know, if you're in a relationship, you know, there should be more good days than bad days. There should be at least more neutral days than bad days. But if there are more bad days, or if when you're around a person, you're walking around on eggshells, hoping not to say something or do something or insinuate something that's going to set them off, you know, and now you have to deal with them, you know, that's not healthy.
And how many relationships did it take you to discover this? Not to make light, but
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one.
Okay.
A lot.
All right.
A lot.
Fair enough. But that's not atypical. It's
not atypical. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, this book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, came out February 7th. You know, I mean, people are buying it, people are reading it, and they were like, I never knew. You know, or you know, I wish I had the note here. Actually, I wonder if I can find it on Facebook really fast.
Well, we're coming up to break in about 5 minutes. So if you want to check it out then, I'm thinking, this connection between the empath, are you saying that all empaths have experienced some sort of abuse or a majority or?
So I had done a survey on Facebook in a group called an Empath. which is a group of people that self-identify as being empaths. Mm-hmm. And I already had like a theory in my mind, and I just needed confirmation. So I'm going to tell you the confirmation, and then I'll tell you the theory.
Sure. Okay.
And so I asked the group, how was your upbringing? Was there abuse and trauma? Or was, everything cool? And clearly over 85% identified that there was trauma and or abuse in their life, in their early life. And so my feeling is, and this is what I was thinking and what I was kind of verifying, like, well, am I just talking about me, or is this really what's going on? Is that people that are empathic, they're able to feel into the world around them, and are very sensitive to what's going on around them. And so if you're in a household where there's always some kind of drama going on and, everything is good. Oh, dad came home, and the energy just changes. Or somebody says something and, the energy changes. Being empathic makes it so that you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on and react accordingly, go hide or whatever that may be.
Sure.
And so I think it becomes in children in toxic households, a response that they develop. They start off already as sensitive individuals, and then they really kind of hone a skill of picking up what's going on around them.
Right. It's inevitable that I have to ask you, and maybe we'll talk about this more on the other side of the break, about potential connections between an empath and the paranormal. But to stay, in the traditional sense of psychology right now, does an empath, if you're around other people, let's say, right now, can you feel if other people have been abused, or with your own self-awareness now? Are you able? Do you have sort of like spidey sense in that regard?
Oh, definitely. And because I've been there. I've walked the walk. It's kind of like someone who is a heroin addict, and is now working with people that are trying to get clean. It's like, you've walked the walk. And so you recognize it, you understand what they're going through, and can relate on a heart level to people.
Kind of like parents who don't notice that their kids, just smoked a joint because they've never done it themselves, and they just completely overlook it because they just don't know what to look for, the signs and whatnot.
I guess. My eyes were only bloodshot because, I was allergic to the chemicals in the dark room.
Oh. Well, we're gonna go to the dark note in a moment. And we'll come out bright-eyed and cheered on the other side. But okay, so one more question before we go to break here. What has been, in all your studies, what has been more important to you? This sort of work, or the work that you've done with researching extraterrestrials and ancient aliens?
That's a tough question. Archaeology was my first love in life. And so exploring ancient mysteries and looking at our history, it feeds my soul. Doing this work was something I had to do for me. And if you grow up in a traumatic household, a lot of the times you're taught not to take care of you on the inside. And so there was a healing just in that part.
I see. All right, well, let's go to the break now, and we'll come back on the other side to continue our conversation with Dr. Rita Louise. If you want to find out more about her, you can go to soulhealer.com. Stay tuned. This is going to be a really fascinating and hopefully helpful conversation for those who have had these negative experiences or just wondering why they are the way they are. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. Stand by. We will be right back.
podcast on iTunes, iHeart, and Spotify. KGRARadio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host on KGRA Radio Live, Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My guest is Dr. Rita Louise, and taking us out of the break was My Own Light by Septembrio, septembrio.com. If you're interested in their music, they are the bumper music contributors every single week. The dysfunctional dance of the empath. What is the dance, Rita?
Well, one of the things that happens is that, there's the innate personality of the empath and narcissist, and they say that opposites attract. And so when you're talking about someone that's empathic, especially a wounded empath, and someone that's narcissistic, it's like they can find each other and then feed off of each other, and the more they feed over each other, it will make the worst parts of each personality come out, and so it becomes this dance of dysfunction. The relationship becomes very unhealthy for both of them.
It's codependent.
Well, let's back up a little bit, because this will make more sense. So people that are empathic, especially ones that haven't healed their childhood trauma, because I believe that, as we're growing up, we develop core beliefs, we develop understandings about ourselves, we live in this toxic environment, we grow up thinking that there's something wrong with us, we're broken, we don't matter, some negative connotation, self-worth issue. And that's true both for the empath and the narcissist. So they both come into a relationship wounded, or can. Empaths tend to be more interested in healing themselves and understanding and doing something. And so you can be an empath but not be a wounded empath. And so people who tend to be empathic have a core belief, or often, in addition to this self-worth issue, carry a core belief that technically is called subjugation. In the more colloquial terms, it's called people-pleasing. And so they're the people that, they just worked 80 hours that week, and a friend calls up and says, hey, can you help me move tomorrow morning at 6 in the morning? And they're like, okay. And they don't think of themselves, and they don't think to take care of themselves, because many times, not always, but many times, there's a fear that if I don't help this person, if I don't support this person, they won't love me anymore. They won't care for me. They won't want to be my friend. I can't say no. Basically, I can't say no. Sometimes they don't feel like they have a choice, because if I say no, there's going to be a negative repercussion, or if I say no, they're going to withdraw their affection for me. Those are the two major things. And so people with that type of personality tend to give without any concern for themselves. Narcissists, on the other hand, are the ultimate takers, and they believe that, everybody should love and admire them and give them their attention. And if you do not want to do what they want you to do, then they will have a hissy fit, they'll manipulate you, they'll guilt you into doing what they want. And so you get an empath who's willing to give, and you get a narcissist who's willing to take. To a narcissist, that's a match made in heaven, because now they have someone who's going to try to meet all of their needs, and the empath feels like this is what I'm supposed to do because that's how they were trained to get love.
So with children constantly trying to please or keep their parents at ease.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Those same children could either become an empath or a narcissist.
Can we come back to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's a whole other chunk of this picture.
Yeah. No. Go ahead.
Okay. And so, so as the relationship develops, the narcissist will, it's kind of like, the attention and the getting from you kind of becomes a drug. And so they will find more things that can become your problem, and find more things that you can take care of, including, their physical needs, they're not going to clean the house anymore because you're going to do it, and they're not going to pay the bills because you're going to do it. And the empath ends up taking on more and more of the responsibility because they're too afraid to say, no, you need to go clean that toilet, And so as time goes on, the relationship becomes more imbalanced, more dysfunctional, and the empath might be running on just complete adrenaline because they don't have any energy, and they don't know how to give and love themselves. And they don't really understand about boundaries. And the narcissist is just like, hey, this is cool. I'm going to go play some text twist and let you manage everything. Period. And then if you say something about it, I'll get irritated and, make some commentary about how you're just laying around the house and not really doing anything.
So does the narcissist play the victim?
Oh, yeah. They're good at it.
Yeah, what's up with that? How does that work?
They're not interested or willing in taking responsibility for anything that's going on around them. They just want to say, well, it's your fault. I was having a conversation today with a friend, and, the neighbor has a dog, and, the dog comes and runs into your yard and bites you. Well, it was, it's not their fault for letting the dog out, not chained up, and it's not their fault that they didn't have a fence. It was your fault because you went to the yard. So they don't take responsibility.
They play the victim card. Mm-hmm. Don't take responsibility. I
mean, and that's the best way to say it is they won't take responsibility for their actions, their thoughts, their ideas, whatever, and they will take the responsibility and put it on to somebody else.
Sure. And how does that happen? How does the narcissist develop then? How did they become a narcissist?
Okay. So, and I'll talk about both of them because it really is a very interesting little chunk of the whole pie.
Okay.
So I think that both the empath and the narcissist come in as sensitive individuals, in the general sense of the word, and I think everyone, are more open and sensitive than other people. And I think that these individuals come in a bit more sensitive. Now you're in a household, growing up in a household with trauma, adversity, abuse, neglect, pick your negative experience. The empath, and this is a pretty spiritual group, so I'm going to get a little more technical. Mm-hmm. The empath is more able to connect to source, more able to connect to God and ground and discharge the negative energy, the trauma. They're able to better emotionally recover from situations, which on some levels is bad because now you've emotionally recovered and you'll go back for more because it's like, well, I feel better, I'm not mad at them anymore, so I'll re-engage, so that's their own little trap. But the narcissist is not able to, and the key word to me is they lose hope. They lose hope in their situation in life. And so in order to deal with the situation, they project it on everybody else.
Wait, so the narcissist doesn't have hope?
No. Their sense of self-worth is so poor that they don't really recover.
So sort of like vampires feeding off of other people, that's how they keep their self-worth?
They are the ultimate energy vampire.
Aha. Okay. Now, if the empath can rebound fairly well, what does that say about the empath who still has to deal with ongoing trauma? Because even if you're in the category of an empath, right, you still may have experienced childhood trauma, which could follow you for a lifetime. So how do those two things, where do those two places meet? The rebounding and the dealing with the trauma.
Okay. And I kind of see them as two different things. You know, I tie more the rebound word to a situation. You know, like, this happens, you were supposed to pick me up from work and you didn't. Mm-hmm. And now I'm really upset. And then you just tell me 500 excuses of why you didn't pick me up. And, you know, it was your fault. Your car broke. I didn't break your car. It's like, you know, and a week goes by and you finally get back to where it's just like, okay, I need to move on from that crap. And, you know, that's rebound. You know, it is a much bigger process of healing the childhood trauma, you know, and that's really one of the things that this book looks to address is what kind of trauma did you experience? And I feel that it's important for the empath to move from being a wounded empath and a people pleaser and a potentially codependent person into being someone that's whole. You know, I use the term, you know, a wounded healer, you know, and they have the scars of the battles on their body to show all the fights they've fought. But they're not scars of loss, they're scars of victory that tell the world they've survived. You know, and so this book really, you know, it's about raising awareness, you know, and I think this was why I think I chose this direction was I didn't even know. And I'm pretty smart, Alan, and I didn't even freaking know.
And you interested in the psyche of people. And that's
what I do for a living.
Right. And you can see it for so long.
Well, and I can clearly see it in other people. I just couldn't see it in myself because no one ever connected the dots and says, you know, well, if you do this, that equals abuse. Or if you do this, you're not loving yourself. It's like, really? I mean, you don't know how many like reallys I had as I'm like working through this material, you know, and educating myself, you know, and I feel like, you know, the only way to educate yourself is, you know, or to break the cycle is to educate yourself so that you can make a better, more conscious choice to say either, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, or I am going to do this because this is a loving thing for me to do. For me.
For you. Self-awareness, why is that such a struggle for us?
You know, they don't teach it to us. You know, we're taught math, we're taught science. We're not taught to check into our feelings. We're not taught that they're important. I mean, I think most of us, when we grew up, you know, we were told, you know, to shut up or to invalidate our own feelings when there was something going on.
Yeah, when I was a 13, 14-year-old, it would have been really helpful if someone explained to me how powerful the subconscious mind is and the decisions that we make and behaviors are unconscious to us. We're not consciously making those decisions. The subconscious mind is doing it for us. And without that knowledge, it is difficult to be self-aware.
You know, and I think people that were brought up in dysfunctional families don't have a good gauge as to this is what healthy looks like and this is not.
Right. Okay. And so when those people are in those situations, right, unhealthy family situations,
I mean, you just think that it's normal. This is how life is. You know, this is how you're supposed to be in a relationship. Well, I married you and I made a commitment to you. And so now I have to suffer through all the crap that you're doing.
But that remains true even when, as time goes on, they go to someone else's home or, you know, events. They see how other families behave. They still believe that the dynamics of what they were raised in is normal. Correct.
Because, you know, what's going on, it could just be a big lie and they're just on best behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another thing, too. Narcissists can be very manipulative, not just to in a romantic relationship, but or to their children, but to the outside world. They can create a completely different face, right?
Exactly, and it's called a false face, you know, and so there's what's going on in their internal world, you know, what they're thinking inside, and then there's what they present to other people, and they can switch it on and off within seconds. You know, you see TV shows, you know, like the dad's in the car and he's yelling at everybody in the car, and then the cop walks up and they're like, hey, and they seem like, you know, Mr. Brady, you know, and everything is peachy keen and we're all happy, and the other people in the car are just like sitting there hanging on and, you know, like the tears streaming down their face because they just had like an awful experience in that moment, you know, and they're masters of it. And the more dysfunctional they get, you know, internally, you know, kind of like the more empathic you become, you know, the more narcissistic you become, the better skilled they are at manipulation, you know. And I'll just share this, you know, so the guy that I got rid of, he would say some of the most horrendous things to me and about me. And I would just look at him and go, because again, didn't know if there was a mental illness or if he was just drunk. And at this point in time, it doesn't matter anymore. But I would just look at him and go, if that's how you really feel, then why are you here? Why are you here? And then the next day, you know, when I'd be like, you need to go, you know, it'd be like, no, I'll go to counseling. It'll all be good. And, you know, you'd get best behavior for a couple of weeks thinking, you know, oh, well, maybe he learned his ways and things are going to be better. And, you know, we've kind of passed this crossroads. You know, so for anybody that has found themselves in a situation like this, you know, if you keep getting, you know, the same reaction and the same repeated behavior over and over again, you just need to, you know, put it in your mind that it really isn't going to change. Just because they make a promise doesn't mean they're going to keep it. You know, actions speak louder than words.
Yes, in recovery programs, they say if you keep doing the same action over and over and over and over again, expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, and if you're with a narcissist, especially a really bad one, that's what it feels like too.
Right. Now, is there room for the narcissist to, or any narcissist to improve? Because my understanding is that a narcissist is, in general, don't do well with counseling, with self-awareness, with changing and becoming better people. And I'm not talking about people with depression. I'm not talking about other psychological maladies. Just specifically, you know, the worst case narcissists just can't change. Is that true?
Well, Alan, that's because there's not anything wrong with them.
Right. And that's insane, right?
You know, and they're not open to, I mean, the bottom line is that they have to be open to looking at what's going on inside, and they have to be willing to look at their trauma that they are covering up with that false face and that false front. And for many of them, it is so intense that they just can't go there. They just can't go there. And I joke around, I'm talking about this book, and they're like, somebody asked me, oh, well, do you think a narcissist, would read it? And I'm like, it's like, if there was a narcissist listening to this show, they would have already turned it off.
or they wouldn't even register with them, right?
Correct. Because it's everybody else, not them. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's fascinating. Now, is that inherently an evil trait or pathology, or what is that?
There's something that's called cluster B personality disorders, So if empaths are on the left side, people with narcissistic tendencies are on the right-hand side. And when you push way out to the end of that spectrum, you hit your cluster B personality disorders that all have some severe form of narcissism tied to them. So that would be histrionic, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, which, actually has its own title, and people that are psychopaths. And so my feeling is, but this is just a feeling, is that for the most part, people that are narcissists do things more because something happens, something inside of them gets triggered, and then they do stupid stuff. But there's not, per se, a level of intentionality behind it. There might be a passive-aggressive response, but not intentionality. People that are psychopaths, they do stuff just to hurt you, period.
But a psychopath can be self-aware, right?
Not really, no. They're all narcissistic.
Okay. So,
and they can kill you and not have any remorse.
Right, but that doesn't apply to all narcissists.
Correct, because they can have remorse.
A narcissist can have remorse. In fact, they can have
and experience guilt.
They can have empathy towards other people, usually outside of their circle, right? Like, because
they don't really have empathy. Well, on some level, I think, as long as it really doesn't have anything to do with them.
Right, and that's what I mean. Yeah, as long as it's outside of their world, they can have feelings about something, the wrongdoings of the world, or what have you. But in those that are in their circle, those people are just pawns to them.
Mm-hmm. But when you meet one, if you are looking, creating a romantic relationship with one, mm-hmm. That false face is just there, and they're just all lovey-dovey in your face, like, oh, we're soulmates, we're meant to be together, and, and they really push the relationship forward. And so if there's not awareness, I'm using that word again because I talk about this in the book, if there's not awareness of like their game plan and their strategy, because they have a very specific strategy with vocabulary, which I found shocking, then you don't know. You might think you just met this person and they're really into you. And if you're wounded and you don't really have a lot of self-worth, and it's kind of like, wow, this person's really into me, and so you're feeding on the little emotional nurturing that you've been looking for your whole life, and this guy's just looking for someone that he can feed off of.
Have you paid any attention to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard situation? The news. I just found myself really fascinated with it, and I don't take any sides, but with recent evidence that has come out, it's everything I have seen tells me that Amber Heard falsely accused Johnny Depp. And it's so it's so almost evil, if that's true. And all the evidence right now is really pointing to her being the abuser and manipulator in the situation. It just, the whole thing the tables have flipped. And to the extent that a person would go through to manipulate another person, to humiliate and ruin someone else's life just to give themselves a platform or to step up and make themselves look good. It's the laying of the chess pieces, the planning that they have to go through just astounds me.
But the end result is that, good press or bad press, if she's the one behind the mic, she's the one getting the attention. So to sit there and disparage somebody else, if that's getting you the attention, that's A-okay if you're a narcissist.
So narcissists, are they inherently attention seekers then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not something that would just happen within like the family home, the dynamic there. Now, can they... Okay, so the narcissist puts on the face for the world, right? So what does the narcissist look like within that home to the family members, to the children?
They're all over the place, because you don't know who's going to show up at any given time. If they want something, you have the kind, loving person who, is being there and being nice. All right, so I'm just going to spill beans because I don't really care. So my ex, the one whose wife I was talking about earlier, who's now his ex also, they have 2 kids. And he doesn't really do anything with the kids unless he has a date. Then the kids are all important because it makes him look good.
Right. Oh, my gosh.
And that's just sick.
That explains so much right there. And I'm sure there are so many people listening right now that can relate to this. If they haven't experienced it, they probably know, even if they don't know, they probably know someone who has experienced this. I think it's more prevalent than most people would like to accept. Mm-hmm. Sort of like, the mom is always the perfect thing, right? You don't go after the mom. Moms, because they get just they're angels, right? And
matter of opinion, but
when that's not true, nobody wants to believe it until damage is done. Mm-hmm. At least in my experience. So this is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. I'm speaking with Dr. Rita Louise. Really, I think, important conversation we're having tonight, and I'm glad you're on here, Rita. We'll come back on the other side. We'll continue to discuss her book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist. Alan B. Smith. We'll be right back.
Say, hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. Hey, that's the wrong way. That's the wrong way. You're lost in a bad way. Starting to let go. Gone too.
Your official contact for the best alternative talk on the planet. KGRARadio.com.
Cost me my family, chaos around me, can't hear my heart say, hey, that's the wrong way, hey, that's the wrong way, hey, that's the wrong way, that's the wrong way. You're lost in a bad way, starting to let go, gone too far the wrong way, can take it all back now, but lost in a bad way, I've gotta let you go. You're supposed to be so close to me, how mostly it goes to me, yeah.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your host on KGRA Radio. Tonight, we're taking a different path than we normally would on this platform. However, we've covered spirituality, metaphysics, addiction, so really it's not all that different. And for so many of us in this broad field of what we call the paranormal, so much of it overlaps with our everyday life and insights into who we are as individuals, our place in this universe, our relationship with our higher powers, or what you believe in. And it's important for us to ask those questions, because the more we know about ourselves, I think we get just a little bit closer to those big questions that we all universally share. So Dr. Rita Louise is with me again, and her book is The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist: Create Healthy Relationships by Healing Childhood Trauma. Taking us out of the break was septembrio.com. So I'm not really sure where to continue, Rita.
All right, I'm going to hijack you for a second.
No, go right ahead. Yes.
But then we can go back, because I think we should talk about healing. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to go there quite yet. Because this is kind of a paranormal show. I'm just going to slide some paranormal right on in. How's that sound?
I wouldn't expect anything less.
I knew that. So, for lack of better term, earthbound spirits, so they've died. They have not done like the life review and gone to heaven, and now they're like coming back and visiting because you just had a baby. They're not those guys. They are individuals who have not shed the emotions, and life experiences they had while they walked the earth. And so if they were nasty here on the earth, they're going to be nasty as a ghost. And when you're dealing with that type of spirit, they usually are really not nice people. Whether they are addicts, and some of them will get a person to drink. They just feed off of emotional energy from the person.
So the worst kind of ghost or entity is a narcissist ghost.
Oh, they are the worst. Well, but then you have, like entities that will attach, that do not present human form, and they do not speak, and I'm putting this in quotes, human. And so from my perspective, trying to interact with them, they don't, the ones that I've encountered don't have human emotions, and so communicating with them is very challenging. And then, there are what I would call demons that don't even remotely take on corporeal form, and what they want, but they will actually enter into the physical body, which is a very, very rare occurrence.
We'll get back to our earlier part of our conversation, but I have to ask you. So, how does one determine that these entities exist in the first place? Like, how do we know that they're an actual thing and not just some sort of aberration of our mind or projection, collective consciousness, something like that?
That's a great question, and this is my personal 2 cents. If you have self-diagnosed with having an entity, you probably don't. Because when you're dealing with an entity, it has entered into your auric field, and so you assume that the feelings that you're having, the thoughts that you're having, the emotions that you're having are your thoughts, your feelings, and emotions. This is what's compelling me forward. And so there is usually not a recognition that there is something external to, maybe I have a mental disorder going on. There are instances where that's not necessarily the case. But I get a lot of people, I have enemy attachments. It's like, my life sucks and I put on weight and I lost my job. It's like, I'm not feeling it.
Well, that makes sense, because we all go through that. We're like, what is wrong with me? Or what is wrong with life? Why can't I get over this hump? Or why am I stuck in this place for so long? It can literally feel like something's just trying to ruin your life. And until you realize it's your perception. It's the things that you are doing unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever.
Yeah. Self-sabotaging, like negative law of attraction type stuff.
Sure.
Not getting out of your own way, and it makes it easier for people to blame deny their own stuff and say, oh, well, I had an entity, or, oh, it was from a past life. It's like, well, babe, it's going on now. So you need to deal with it now, and you can blame the past life, or you can blame the entity, or you can figure out how to get past it. But healing, see, we can transition here. Healing from an entity is the same thing as what you would do to heal yourself to not get involved with a narcissist anymore.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. It was an anonymous question sent to me. So from Anonymous, I am dealing with a narcissistic mother. Most people advise me to not have any contact. I have been no contact for a year, and it has been very, very difficult. She told me you no longer have a mother during one of her anger phases, and that is why I have been no contact, not of my choice. However, I have maintained no contact afterward as my choice. She has not said I am sorry, not even once. She has sent me a short email and a text. That's it. Is no contact the only way to be in order for me to be healthy? I identify as the empath and have many waves of grief and feeling like I need to call her, although I know what the result will be. Is no contact something that I need to get used to?
And I feel like, Anonymous, that you've answered your own question, because as you know, you call and you're just going to get the same behavior, the same yuck treatment. And so the choice is do I love myself enough and just basically stay away, or do you make communication, do you make contact with the upfront understanding that I'm going to have to experience some of this at some point in time in the conversation or whatever is going on. Them changing, your mom changing is not really going to happen. And I'm going to share something very, very personal, just for you. So my mom passed in September. And everyone was like, oh my God, your mom passed, blah, blah, blah. And I experienced more trauma for myself than I experienced about losing my mom, who is my main tormentor. And what I was experiencing was there was no hope of ever getting her to love me. There was no hope of ever having her change. There was no hope of ever feeling valued by her or respected by her. There was this whole big old long list, but it put a period at the end of the sentence of it's done. There's not this little part of my mind waiting and hoping and praying something's going to change and something's going to happen. And so the no contact helps you get to that place easier, where you're not waiting, because I think if your mom was, I think if you look at it and go, well, if your mom wasn't your mom and she was just a person that you could have a relationship with, friend type relationship with, would you? And if you get this giant no for an answer, then maybe you need to honor the answer you're getting.
It sounds like it's
complicated. Families are complicated.
Well, if you do the no contact, you're suffering in some way, right? I mean, it's like either way, it's like you're still suffering.
But you can suffer because you are missing, and desiring to have this connection, But when you make contact with someone like that, it is your suffering and wishing, and now they just hit you with a 2x4 on top of it.
Right.
And it's just like, well, I really didn't need that.
But then you go back for more and go back for more.
Well, that's the dysfunctional part, yeah.
Right. And so I guess you've experienced that.
My mom and I, even though there was still part of me that hoped and prayed, had a very big healing when I was about 30. Even though that part of me never felt that completely from her, but I didn't hate her anymore, so that was good.
Well, that's good. Yeah, letting go of that, I can understand, because to hate someone or resent someone, that just fuels more negative energy and discomfort and pain. Mm-hmm. But
it was a mutual hate thing, so I didn't feel so bad about it, which really was the resolution, because I always thought she hated me, and she thought I hated her, and I'm like, I never hated you.
So your family, do they take sides? Do they understand what you went through?
I released the book, and actually I was talking to one of my sisters. There's 8 of us. And so I was talking to one of my sisters, and she goes, I don't need to read your book. I lived it.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm like, yeah, but, it's not a memoir. I'm not like just dishing up crap.
But that's
from the family. Say that again?
That's affirmation, though.
Mm-hmm.
But other families out there, okay, so if you're brother, sister, siblings, whatever, then you have that direct shared experience. But as we were discussing earlier, the narcissist can put on a good face for people outside of the house, and that can include the rest of your family. So do you have others in the family that are like, Rita, we've known her for so long. What are you talking about? This is crazy.
Not in my family.
So,
how's that?
Were they aware then?
Yeah. Everybody. I mean, it was kind of hard to overlook. I think that, some of it, there was what happened, and then there's how much you're able to put a word to it or fully understand on a conscious level. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I have been in my many relationships with, and I need to, and I've been wanting to say this, it's like not all narcissists are men. Women right up there, it's 50-50 thing, can be narcissists too. I just keep saying him because I'm a girl and I like guys. So I say him. Just saying. But I would talk to them about their family, and they would always have these very Pollyanna, oh no, they were good and they were loving to me and blah, blah, blah. And, like one of my husband's dad died from cirrhosis of the liver from alcohol abuse. And it's like, so you're trying to tell me it was all happy, happy, joy, and your mom and dad were both alcoholics? I'm not feeling it, But they won't go there. They won't talk about it, because then it exposes them. 2, it might bring up feelings that they have to deal with now, and they don't want to deal with that. And so they'll kind of candy coat, their history, that it was all okay and it was all hunky-dory, which again is a lie.
Well, okay, that brings up a good question, piggybacking on what we were just talking about. Is it easier to lie to yourself or to try to maintain contact with someone and just keep like a safe distance? Like, okay, you accept, they're a narcissistic abuser, so you can have, hey, how are you sort of conversations, just checking in, adios. Or is that still too close?
My personal philosophy is that they can live east of the Mississippi, and I'm good with that.
Okay.
Right. And I'm serious. I was 17. Yeah. Well, I was 19. And I moved from New York to California. Mm-hmm. So, 3,000 miles was pretty good. Now I live in Texas, but I still have that Mississippi rule, because that's close enough.
Right. But are you keeping an arm's length? Do you still think that for people who are dealing with severe narcissists, that really no contact is like the ideal situation?
Well, if you live really far away, then really the only contact you can have is by phone, unless you make the conscious effort to go visit. It's much more challenging if, mom lives down the street or in the next city over, and there's family get-togethers, and it's so-and-so's birthday, and you have to go. You know what I mean? So it just creates a lot more complication than if you live far away and you don't have to go. You live far away.
What if your family shuns you and says, your father or your mother, they weren't like that. It must be you. It must be your own perception. And then you feel kind of alienated. How do you manage that? I mean, if you can't get people to believe you, then what? Outside of the actual narcissists themselves.
Well, then I think it's just part of your own personal healing journey. When you go no contact, when you decide to have that communication with those people, every time you don't respond or don't pick up the phone or whatever it is, because of that history, it's you saying, I love myself more than to allow myself to get tangled up into that situation and be hurt or beat up again. Right.
But so how do you then, okay, you make that decision, right? And that's a hard decision.
It's a hard decision.
How do you get through that?
It's kind of like, breaking an addiction. It's a step-by-step, day-by-day. Mm-hmm. You're getting around the holiday times and, you want to be around your family, and it's hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody'd be doing it, and we'd all be in great shape. And so I don't want to minimize, the effort that it does take.
Sure.
But the more, again, people don't necessarily see that as a loving act. You're loving yourself more. You're valuing yourself more, that you're not willing to take the abuse.
I will draw this parallel that I can think of. So in recovery rooms, people who are just getting over or going to a whatever program for the first time, and they're in a really dark, broken place, and they walk into one of these recovery rooms and see that people are smiling and laughing and joking and happy, the first reaction is, what the hell? Mm-hmm. Like how what? This doesn't make sense. This is not what I expected at all, because these are people that can relate to me, and yet they seem to be doing well and enjoying their life. So I think that's the trickiest part, is getting to the other side. It's not to say that you've cured the problem, but getting to the other side where you can sort of be free of the worst of it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that takes just time. And when you're talking about narcissistic abuse, especially, and I'm going to quantify this, especially when you're in a romantic relationship with someone, because there's just so much more involved. It has been said that it is easier to give up heroin than to give up and walk away from a narcissistic relationship. Mm-hmm. Because there's something that's called trauma bonding. Have you ever heard that term, trauma bonding?
I haven't, in passing. Do you want to expound on that?
Sure. So trauma bonding is kind of like Stockholm Syndrome, mm-hmm. Where you come to like the person that's keep holding you hostage. And so when you're in a relationship with someone who is a narcissist, so when times are good, when you're getting along, when they want something, when they're getting their way or the attention they desire, it's like your body has dopamine and, the serotonin and all these feel-good hormones, and then something shifts and you make some comment to them, whatever that may be, or something happens, and you go from, feeling good into this place of cortisol release, and, all of these stress hormones now flowing through your blood, and so now you're in this like fight or flight hormonal situation, and so that might go on for 2 or 3 days, depending on the person. And then the next thing you know, it's like, well, they decide that, they're going to come around and things start resolving. And so you go from this walking on eggshells, totally not knowing what's going on, all these, stress hormones floating through your body, to a big dopamine dump and a big serotonin dump. And so now you're high on these feel-good hormones. And the situation happens so often that hormonally you can become very deregulated. Wow. And so when you're with someone and and this is more in the romantic relationships, but I can see where this could happen, in any narcissistic dynamic. So you say goodbye and it's like, well, I'm going to block them, or, it's sometimes hard to block them on social media because inside you're just thinking, well, maybe they'll send me a text. Maybe they really do love me. Maybe, maybe. But what's really happening is that your body, you're now in this chronic stress state because you just ended the relationship where they just dumped you. And what you're craving is that dopamine high. It's just like, just send me a text. Maybe I should send you a text. You know what I mean? And it really is like a freaking craving. And they say it is harder, I'll repeat it is harder to end a really toxic narcissistic relationship than it is to quit heroin.
That's pretty intense. And
it is intense.
Any idea of the number of people or percentage of population that has to deal with these sort of relationships?
Everybody has a certain level of narcissism. Everybody.
Sure.
It's like there are always times where, I want my way. It's when you always want your way and are unable to compromise, and it's not a mutually beneficial relationship. That's when you're starting to take it to, the dark side. And I don't really have statistics, but again, it's a spectrum where, like the ex-husband that I've talked about a couple of times on this show, he was pretty narcissistic. The guy that I got rid of, whether he was schizophrenic, whether he had narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, or whether he was just a flat drunk. Again, don't know, but he was just out there. And just really high on that spectrum, and so I think the more intense they are on that spectrum, and drug abuse, and I'll just use that kind of abuse issues, really can increase someone's narcissistic tendencies, because their addiction issues can overpower any other thing going on. So they don't really care who they hurt. They just want that other drink, or they want that next high, or I'm just going to go spend all the rent money and all the grocery money because I want to go gambling, and so there's, that whole addiction mentality can create very narcissistic characteristics in people who might not really be a narcissist.
Okay, we're going to open up the phone lines, the Paranormal Radio app phone lines for everyone. That number is 85KGRA live. Super easy to remember, 85KGRA live. Call in to pose your questions. And I'd really like to hear what you all have to say tonight. And I have a question, Rita, from the chat room. Now, this is from Libertas. And I believe this is quite serious of a question. Dr. Rita, do you write about any pleasant people or experiences in your book?
The only biographical type thing I discuss in my book is my own history, and that's one chapter. The rest is, I don't present any case studies at all.
Okay. And so when you're reading the book and you're coming out of it, what's the message for feeling better? For what can people take away from this?
That happiness is possible. That you don't have to stay in this cycle of abuse. But my feeling is, thus the title, Create Healthy Relationships by Healing Childhood Trauma, is that hoping and praying you're going to meet somebody good doesn't mean that you're going to meet somebody good, but by fixing who you are on the inside and loving and honoring and valuing who you are, you might still attract a narcissist, but you're going to show them to the door a lot faster than you would have before.
Okay. How does one actually come to be self-aware that they are an empath that has had a narcissistic relationship? Where's that transition?
Well, and I think that really is about the awareness, and that really is the focus of this book. So it's kind of hard to just kind of condense it all into, a minute or two, but that is the focus of the book, is to raise people's awareness of this is what abuse is. And, this might be how you were raised, and parenting styles and attachment disorders and family dynamics. And, okay, so this is what was going on in either inside of me, in my family of origin. These are some core beliefs that I might have, negative core beliefs, and ways that I might get triggered and have certain defense mechanisms. So this is all about me. What's going on in me? Because if I don't really understand what's going on in me, I can't fix it. And then it goes into the whole narcissistic, empath-narcissistic dynamic, because if you don't really understand what an empath is or what a narcissist is and how they act, I just can't, just how they act, it's hard to spot them. Especially there's something that's called a covert narcissist, who they play the pity potty card real well. They tend to be quiet and meek. They tend to invalidate themselves a lot, and so you think, well, this person just kind of wounded, but they're kind and loving. No, it's just the masks they wear to get you to feel sorry for them and then take care of them. And those are the worst, because if they're loud and vivacious and grandiose and, look at me, those are pretty easy to spot.
Right.
It's the quiet ones that get you.
The overt.
Covert.
The overt versus the covert.
Correct.
And so the covert, it could be someone that we've known for a long time and just have no idea.
It could be someone that you've known for a long time but haven't really pissed off, or you might say, oh, well, if they have a reaction to something, maybe they just had a bad day, but they tend to be way more self-deprecating than the other person, but they use that self-deprecation for you to go, oh, it's not that bad. They're really the ultimate victims, and they come off as the ultimate victims.
Right. Okay, everyone listening, the phone lines are open. So if you have a question for Dr. Rita Louise, call 85-KGRA-LIVE. That's 855-472-5483. Rita, where does people-pleasing come from?
Well, people-pleasing comes from the... all right, let's formulate some words here. So if you're in a situation, growing up, where you recognize that if I do these things, then I'm going to get attention or notice or love, then we're going to, as children, do those things so we can get attention, notice, and love. Mm-hmm. And so when we become an adult, we're programmed with the belief that this is what I need to do in order to be in a relationship, because our earliest relationships are with our parents, and that sets the stage for every relationship we have after that.
See, but I feel like I've seen a wide array of people who do people pleasing, and not necessarily people who've come from abusive, places, but they've developed that somewhere. And could that be from like bullying? Could that be from other factors as well?
Right. But I mean, something like bullying would go into that category. It still is early childhood trauma, even though I don't really address that in the book. It could be, it could come from a number of different places. With people pleasing in particular is I am doing these actions so that you'll like me.
Right.
And that's really the bottom line, because if I say no, then you're going to withhold your love or attention or affection or friendship, or there's going to be a negative result that happens. So if I say no, you're going to hit me. Right.
Okay. So, and that experience can come from any person, not
Correct.
Just your direct family.
Correct.
So you can grow up in a perfectly healthy, or as perfect as possible, healthy family dynamic, and still come out of their childhood traumatized because some other family member or a teacher or a babysitter or something like that. And now,
exactly.
Those people would more likely be empathetic people when they get older. Is that correct?
That would be my assessment of it. Again, I think everybody has a little people pleasing in them.
Sure.
But some people have better boundaries, and are better suited at looking at what their needs are, in relationship to the other person and making sure at least some of their needs are getting met, and then there are people that take it to the furthest extent who really don't look at what they want or what they need, because all of their energy and attention is focused on the other person and making the other person happy. And our society tells us, it's interesting. I wrote this article about unconditional love, and we're told that unconditional love is that we're just supposed to love people, quote unquote, unconditionally, so if they do terrible things, we're supposed to raise our energy to love them unconditionally. But that's really not very healthy. And I'm not saying love somebody conditionally, but maybe we need to look at who and what we're giving that unconditionalness to and apply it appropriately. Apply it with the concept that, but if I'm being hurt in it, then maybe I shouldn't love you unconditionally.
Right, so it's okay to put up certain boundaries, to apply a certain amount of discipline, that sort of thing.
Right.
Rather than a lot of parents who just want to be best buds with their kids.
I mean, I think that is one of the parenting strategies, is, there are some parents, like my parents in particular, were authoritarians, man. It was like, go by the rules or it's not very good. It's like, the because I say so kind of thing, but then there's something that's called permissive parents, where they really rather be the friend of the child, and that creates a whole separate kind of dynamic within the child, because now they have to take on the responsibilities of figuring out how they fit in society, because there's not anybody really modeling being a parent, right, or telling them, well, this is right or this is wrong,
Comment by Excella in the chat room is love like a cat. Does that jive?
What, like eat the food, shake your tail at you, and walk away?
I think just a little leg rubbing, just enough love, and then, okay, thanks, I'm good. I'm going to go off and do my thing. I don't know if that works for humans.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think, the narcissist will just do what they want, whenever they want, and I think that so there's the unhealed empath, which will be the people pleaser, and they'll just say yes to anybody because they don't have any boundaries, but a healed empath, someone who's gone through the dark night of the soul and has emerged as a wounded healer, will look at the individual and make a choice. Do I want to help and support this person or not? So they're not being influenced by, this subconscious, they might not love me. Because, when we have that, maybe they won't love me, it's subconscious. You just say yes because you just think that that's what you're supposed to do. But by raising your awareness and understanding, then you can make that choice. Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to involve myself in? Do I want to extend my energy to this individual or situation or whatever?
Right. Okay, everyone listening, we have less than 15 minutes of the phone lines open for you. So if you want to call in, we promise they are working tonight. It's 855-472-5483. That's 85KGRA live. So I have to ask, unfortunately, after abuse and one having this awareness and one seeking to heal, and in this case, maybe they read your book and they learn something from that and get better, does that make them ultimately a better clairvoyant or a better someone with better psychic abilities? Because I would imagine, obviously, there's that connection between being empathetic and being an empath towards those more supernatural, if we will, inclinations.
I don't think so. I don't think it makes you be more open, but I think it can help you be clearer because you have less internal junk, and less junk for things to have to filter through. Mm-hmm. So your ability to be discerning might be increased, but I don't think it makes you be more psychic or less psychic.
So, because I thought, in life, when we go through hardships, right, they can either cripple us or we can be stronger in some regard. So let's put that aside. What strengths does an empath end up with once they've gone through this healing process?
Inner fortitude, an ability to say no, an ability to choose and say, I would rather sit here by myself than be in a relationship with someone that sucks. For some people, that's huge.
And that's your feeling. You feel stronger yourself. You have more.
Alan, I already thought I was really strong.
But that's interesting, right?
But in my, it's interesting, because people that know me, they're like, oh man, she's got her shit together. Well, okay, I didn't say that word. Anyway, and I even thought so, but apparently no. And so in that area of my life, I am much stronger, and one of my issues, I'll just tell all, one of my personal issues was I was very challenged in speaking my inner world, and so if there was something that bothered me, I just put up. I was very good at it. And not so much anymore. I mean, it still is a work in progress, but but not anymore, and so it is taking and creating new skill sets. It is working on creating new neural pathways so that instead of always living in a negative place where everything sucks, you're creating more positive pathways where it's like where you can experience joy and happiness in your life. I mean, many times people that come from toxic households, they're surviving and they're not living. And it gives them the chance to live and maybe be happy at the same time and find somebody good to have a relationship with.
Right.
That's like the bonus right there.
But, it's so complicated, and I bring this up a lot in just my everyday conversations and with guests here on the air. We are made up of millions, if not billions, of little moments. And it's hard to decode who we are and how it came to be, because one person can have several traumatic experiences and somehow seem to get through that on their own in a more healthy way than someone who has just one bad experience at just that wrong moment where their mind, their soul, just couldn't process it. And it had a deep-seated effect on their subconscious, and it hurts them for years to come, and they can't figure it out. So how does one begin that, you're speaking of archaeology earlier, that sort of, dig on oneself to find that thing? Or is it impossible sometimes because there's just so many moments that, like this huge mathematical equation, that make us who we are?
And there's identifying the moment, and then there's identifying the belief, that is sitting there. I mean, in my work, I work as a medical intuitive, and, many of the clients that come to me that have health issues, when you dig down into their body, so let's say they have an issue going on with their liver, and I start digging into, this is what's going on functionally, but you can start reading the emotional energy, and you can tell them, it's like, you had these issues going on, and this is how you hold on to energy, and really tap into core beliefs that's functionally making them sick. So if it's making them sick, how much is that controlling their day-to-day life? Right,
exactly. Yep. Okay, Rita, we're going to go to the first call. Blue Orb, you are on the air.
Hi, Alan. Hey, great show tonight. And for Dr. Rita, I have been just totally riveted. I have barely blinked through the entire show.
Oh, thank you. What's your question?
I've got so many questions. But here's the thing. I've been through a couple of these myself, and it is, it's difficult. It's difficult to see. It's difficult to learn it, It's difficult to face up to how stupid you were. That's one of the parts that gets me. But is what we're seeking like a dynamic balance in our lives?
So, yes. It is. And so what I'm going to put back, and people have not been particularly thrilled with my commentary in this area, Well, let me ask a question. Blue Orb, are you familiar with law of attraction?
Yes.
Okay, so if you think about it, the people you're attracting into your life is the energy that you're putting out. And so if you're attracting dysfunctional people into your life, then you must be putting out energy that what I want is dysfunction, or I'm dysfunctional. And so by fixing those beliefs in yourself, which is where this whole book is coming from, then what you put out is, I'm a good person, I'm happy, I'm whole, I have value, I love myself, I have worth, and you put that out into the universe, and then you start attracting to you people that love themselves, that have value, that have worth, versus, somebody that's breathing.
something else that we're talking about earlier, you brought up, are narcissists, they can spot you if you're in an auditorium with 500 people, okay? They will spot the one that they can leech onto. You know?
Well, I think that...
it is both sides. You are broadcasting back, and it's exactly what they're looking for.
Right. And I think that people that are empathic in general, because of that hope that I was talking about earlier, tend to exude more love and light. They tend to be more patient. They tend to be more forgiving. They tend to be more tolerant. And so, for someone that's a narcissist, they're made in the shade. They have someone who's going to stand there and take it and not say or do anything for a while because they're good.
Yep.
And it's just, and I think, again, the biggest thing is that, as the empath, as the person on the receiving end, there's just not an awareness that you can change it, and the change really has to happen from within and not just getting somebody new, because you go and get somebody new and it's just a repeat of the person you had before, because as law of attraction says, you're going to keep getting the same thing until you learn the lesson.
Yep.
Blue, you sound like I'm speaking from experience or have knowledge of this. Do you have any personal words of wisdom or suggestion that you can share with the listeners?
Okay. Will brought something up in chat earlier tonight, and he said, listening to this and listening to what kind of predators are out there, it kind of ruins his faith in humanity. And that is absolutely not true, because these people are rare. Now, they wound a lot of people, but they're not, 95, 97% of the human beings that you run into out there are good, caring individuals. And once you've learned to spot these people, you're immune. So getting the word out there is absolutely essential. And I guess that's about all I can add to that.
Well, no, thank you. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the call. Do you have any other questions for Dr. Rita Louise?
No, but I haven't got your book yet, but I am definitely going to. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, I'm just going to interject a little plug here. Obviously it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but if people, and I've been on KGR Radio a lot and with Alan, and I have people that love me, I know that, but if you want a signed copy, you have to buy it through my webpage, soulhealer.com, but they all come signed, and if you want to inscribe, just let me know, like with your name in it.
I'll send you a note.
Very cool, very nice. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Blue. Have a good night.
You too.
Well, I think that says a lot. I agree, Rita, that sometimes we can just feel like, what's the point in this world? Things just are so bad so often. It's like things get a little bit better and then things go wrong, and there's evil people, and who can you trust? We have to some degree, put some trust in some people. We just have to, right? But I take very seriously the X-Files slogan, trust no one. It doesn't mean I can't have, for me at least, it doesn't mean I can't have a healthy relationship with most people, but there's always a part of me that just, I don't, especially with someone I don't know as well, I don't know what their actual motives are. So I guess that can be a scary place for a lot of people.
And it's interesting. I was having a conversation online just today with a couple of friends, and all three of us very empathic, which is why we're friends. And and it was a conversation about, something to the effect of, well, we didn't really know that there were bad people in the world because we just assumed that everybody was kind and loving like us and cared about the welfare of other people. And it was a bit shocking to find out that that just really wasn't the case, and so sometimes empaths will end up in a relationship with a narcissist because they just assume that the person that they're with is going to treat them how they treat them back.
Right. So how can empaths help others and help, I guess, the society as a whole? What value does the empath have?
Well, the empath plays a huge role because the empath helps to bring love and compassion into the world. Could you imagine an entire world of narcissists? It'd be like, who could be more narcissistic than the next? All you have to do is watch the daily news and watch politics of, who can be more narcissistic than the next, and the biggest narcissist wins. I don't really know, but that's kind of how it plays out where, people that are empathic, they want to get along. They want to, I don't want to say kumbaya society, but, because they're so sensitive to what's going on, if there's discord in the force, they can feel it, and it's not comfortable. And so having it be like calm and everybody getting along is a much more congruent, safe, internal space. If the outside world is calm and placid, the world is better. The world is safer. And that's what they bring to the table.
Right. All right. Dr. Rita Louise, thank you so much again for coming on.
Well, you're so very welcome. I love coming on your show. I really do. You always have the best questions.
You have the best answers. We always have fun. It's like I'm just hanging out with you, around the kitchen table. So obviously, if you do any other works, we'll have to have you back on again. But are there any other books right now that you'd like people to check out, or just really want to focus on this for a while?
Yeah, I just want to focus on this. Obviously, all of my books are on Amazon.com or my website, which all comes signed, soulhealer.com. And as we talked about, there's ones about psychic stuff and energy medicine and, ancient aliens and ghosts. And this is the newest title, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rita.
Thanks, Alan, for having me.
Right, that is it. Thank you all for joining us tonight on Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio, Tuesdays 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. KGRA is your official contact for the best in alternative talk radio. To find out more, go to kgraradio.com/paranormalnow. Join us next week with a very special guest I'm excited to have on, KGRA's own L.A. Marzulli. And of course, yes, we'll be talking about the Nephilim. But we're going to let L.A. talk about whatever he thinks is the most important issue in regard to the Bible and ancient aliens. So stay tuned next week. And special thanks, as always, to KGRA producer Race Hobbs. Until next time, live in the mystery.
It's not right when I come home to you at the end of the day, just to avoid change. One more night, just for one more night.